Think we could all agree that this 2024 season has been one to remember since we have seen Red Bull fall from glory again, McLaren rise to glory again, Mercedes potentially cooking for the future, and Ferrari. But see, this irks me. All the other teams around us were cooking but us. At first, we were fast and closest to Red Bull, then we fell off really hard, and now we are fast again and closest to McLaren and look likely to nab up second from Red Bull. So this season has now raised the question from me. Why do we always come off second best? Seriously, remember any season with a title race and it is likely Ferrari were second. You have 2022, 2018, 2017, 2012, 2010, 2008, 2006, and so on and so forth. Obviously, there are a multitude of reasons as to why we always came second in those seasons, but the main goal of this video is to determine if there was an event in all those seasons that are identical or near enough that caused the downfall. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about each of those seasons, since for what I want to do, it's just going to waste like 2 hours of your time. So I'm just going to take a sample for 3 of these seasons, and I choose 2022, 2017, and 2012 to represent this video's ideas. I think that these 3 seasons show perfectly how to bottle a season through various manners. So once we're done analyzing the seasons, I'm going to conclude on a final thought and truly see if all these bottle seasons can be connected. So before we go any further, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock who are seeing this early, by the way, and if you want to see videos early too, make sure to join the flock as it would also greatly help me out. Also, we finally hit 7,500 subs now, and in case you didn't see the community post, I now have a Discord that is launched, so make sure to join if you want a place to hang out and talk F1 news, memes, and just about anything else outside of racing. And subscribe if you are new if you want to see a duck with a monotone voice ramble on and on. So, enough yapping, and let us see why Ferrari always comes second. So let's start by how recent the seasons were, and we first have 2022. Man. Fun fact, I was watching some 2022 highlights a couple days ago and I experienced such a rage when I remember not only how good we were, but how bad we bottled the season. Charles's driving in the early F175 car did not deserve to lose the championship in Japan and Coda. We at least, at the very least, should have gone all the way to the end in Abu Dhabi, but alas, it was never meant to be. Anyways, how exactly did we bottle? Well, to understand that, we need to look at the context. The 2022 regulations were meant for 2021, however, thanks to a little virus, it was delayed to next year, which gave all the teams practically an extra year of development. And also keep in mind, 2020 was a bad year for Ferrari, and most of that season's resources went to the new regulation car, so we were expected by Ferrari fans and other fans alike to come out swinging in 2022, and that is exactly what we did. Bahrain 2022 will forever remain one of my favorite days on this planet, since we finally won after 3 whole years in a 1-2 fashion, might I add. But more importantly, our car was tight and even faster than Red Bull, and Charles was keeping Max on alert. And no other race showed that more than Australia, since we had virtually zero competition. Charles just dominated on his way to victory, and we were comfortably leading the teams and drivers championship. The F175 was truly a beauty. However, this happiness wouldn't last since the downfall was starting to begin. The RB18 was catching up, and soon enough, it was now the fastest car, and the F175 was already hitting its ceiling with performance, and it became very apparent. We got the car concept wrong. It was good while everybody else was still overweight, but now that everyone is starting to lose all the excess weight, we are vulnerable, and now we are at a crossroad. We could either go all in on the car and at least try and stay competitive, or halt development and prioritize 2023 so we could try again for the title. Well, in typical Ferrari fashion, we created a third road that didn't need to be made and said, nah, let's barely bring meaningful upgrades so Carlos can feel more comfortable in the car and leave Charles out in the dust. And oh, it'd also be good to make some of the most idiotic strategic decisions ever. There are entire fail compilations for 5+ minutes of Ferrari in just the 2022 season. The first half of 2022, by the way. Plus, we didn't even mention the reliability of our engine, since we looked all fine and dandy, and then boom, we have Spain, we have Baku, we have Austria. The engine started to blow up more than Al Qaeda, and that put the final nail in the coffin for the season. So where did it all go wrong? Who's to blame for this? Well, obviously the team, and especially Mr. Binotto, since they made so many idiotic and incompetent decisions that still caused me so much head loss to this day, and it became very apparent that we needed new management. So thankfully, Fred Vasseur stepped in and is doing a good job right now. So Thank the Lord for that. Now, let us talk about 2017, and similar to 2022, this was the first year of new regulations, and again, similar to 2022, we just came off of some pretty mediocre seasons in 2015 and especially 2016. So again, people were expecting Ferrari to cook, and that is exactly what happened in Australia that season. We beat Mercedes fair and square, and in the next round in China, it became very apparent that we were in for a Lewis v Seb title fight, and oh man, take me back. But again, the season started out good since Seb was winning a good amount of races, and even though Lewis was as well, we still kept him on his toes and made sure that if he messes up, we'd be right there for the taking. So what happened next? Well, of course we made a mistake in Silverstone and Lewis and Merck were right there for the taking. Great. In Silverstone, we were having a good race. We looked set for P3 and P4, but insert Ferrari strategy moment, and now we have punctures on both cars with less than 5 laps to go. Well, we all make mistakes, so let us move on. And Seb, he moved on. He kept it consistent for the next few races, but then we enter the final day, the day of reckoning, the day where the tides shifted and life would burn in a crisp. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic, but I am of course talking about Singapore. For those who don't know, the championship is ultra tight right now, and Mercedes are looking faster and faster. So in Singapore, they qualified badly and the race would be wet, meaning just keep it on the black stuff and we should have a nice result, especially because we are P1 and P3. So the lights go out and we're already out. Now, if I was the actual Ferrari company, I would say that the stationary Max is responsible for taking us out, but we have to be real. Why on earth did Seb do that? Had he kept his line, Max wouldn't need to jerk to the left and clip Kimi, and sure, Kimi would have taken the lead, but still, better than for Seb to be out, right? Well, no matter, Lewis now had a giant gap in the championship, and a series of mistakes afterwards, such as a DNF in Japan, would seal the title for Lewis. So, what went wrong? Again, I think it's obvious, but now it's a mix of driver and team incompetency. Team incompetency mainly comes from reliability, since there were a few moments, such as in Japan, like I mentioned, where a faulty spark plug killed the race before it even started. Wonder where I know this from. As well as strategic errors like in Silverstone with the punctures, but now I include driver mistakes here, and before you ask, yes, I know I left that out in 2022, but when the team is practically against you and actively fucking you over at every given opportunity, then I don't blame Charles for the crashes like in France. Anyways, this time, Seb was making mistakes that he didn't even need to worry about, like in Singapore. I get it, you can't always think in the race since you have more important things, but this crash was so preventable and could have at least kept us in the fight for much longer, even if Seb lost out to Max and Kimi. Now finally, we have the 2012 season. And apologies if I get any information wrong for this one, since I didn't watch the season due to literally being 7. So yeah, anyways, how on earth of the seasons I just mentioned, how on earth is this the one where we almost went all the way? This car was nowhere near title contending level. Sure, it really wasn't as bad as many people say it was, like people calling it a midfield car, but I mean, this wasn't exactly a super fast car, yet Fernando Alonso somehow almost did it. Oh man. Anyways, the actual season would be good and bad. We had races where we were not only cooking, but cooking, dining, and cleaning up our mess. However, there were other races where the car's weaknesses were truly on display. Anyways, our main rivals this season was ironically Seb and Red Bull, and not only were Red Bull met at the beginning of the season, but they had illegal allegations. No, not Diddy allegations, but having illegal car part allegations, which were proven correct, and this no doubt slowed Red Bull down. However, not really. They continued to be fast and more importantly, consistent, which we weren't, but we had the saving grace since Seb actually has done quite a few mistakes across the season, and unless he locked in, Fernando was set for a 3rd title. So, did we do it? No. Seb locked the absolute hell in and went rampaging until Brazil, where not even a spin to the back of the grid stopped him. He crushed our dreams with a brilliant drive that day that we honestly have to respect. The season was absolutely chaotic with not only good stories, but even better racing. It's basically this season, except better in every single category, and one thing held true between 2012 and 2024. Ferrari still can't win a title for the life of them. Ultimately, this year's faults can be traced to how the car wasn't a title contender. Again, it really wasn't that bad, but also again, it could have and should have been so much more better than it was. And maybe if it was, that season would have been ours. But alas, No use in thinking about the ifs. A certain fan base can learn a thing or two from that. Anyways, what causes this to happen? Why do we constantly finish second in seasons where a title is or could be on the line? Well, if you were paying attention, you would say it's due to incompetencies from either the team, driver, or maybe both. And you're not wrong, but when does the incompetency start? Why do we start these seasons so good but end so horribly? Where is the line drawn between the competent part of the season and the incompetent part of the season? Well, my friend, that's the thing. We've always been incompetent. Every season we start incompetent, just sometimes it accelerates later as the season goes on. We could go so far back as to the literal Lauda days where he complained about the car, and who knows if he actually said this, but there is that classic line from the movie Rush, and I would not doubt if it was a literal thing Nicky said. The truth is, we have gotten so comfortable being the most prestigious team on the grid that it does not matter if we fail or mess up. We have the money anyways, and we'll just continue making a good car for a title that ends up absolutely nowhere because we don't learn from our mistakes. If the team looks at the mistakes in 2022, 2017, and 2012 and be like, oh, well, at least we came back in 2022, or at least in 2017 we saw Seb doing good, or, well, we weren't supposed to be competitive in 2012, then how can we ever learn from our mistakes? Ferrari needs to acknowledge the bad in those seasons and only the bad so they could learn from the mistakes and stop trying to find the positives in those seasons and keep the cycle of incompetency repeating. If we do finally learn from our mistakes, then that could lead to a competent strategy team. It could lead to a car that doesn't break down every 6 races, and most importantly, it could lead to a clear long-term plan that employees trust in. Thankfully, I would say Ferrari are heading towards that direction lately with Fred Vasseur, since I would imagine had Binotto still been in charge, the bathtub side pods would still be on the car and we'd be wondering right now why we can't even finish on the podium anymore. Hopefully, Ferrari keeps learning their lessons sooner rather than later, and the previous incompetent strategy, car building, and reliability mistakes will be gone and success will be our heritage again. So that was my thoughts on why Ferrari always comes in second. This video was inspired from this comment, so quick thanks to this guy for the idea. Anyways, maybe I was being a bit too dramatic and maybe full on wrong, but that is the beauty of opinions. We all got our own, and as long as we could justify it, it shouldn't be discredited. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe since it would greatly help me out, and let's try and push for 10k subs by the end of the year, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of the issue, and as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.